Welcome back to Mental Health and Me. I'm Natalie Souders. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you don't know much about me, I am a therapist. I've been working in the DMV area for the last 13 years. In addition to being a therapist, I do all sorts of fun things like acting, like writing, and of course, podcasting. If you've been with me for the 3 years I've hosted this podcast, you'll know that 2 years ago, I hosted an episode called Love, Marriage, and Authenticity. And interestingly enough, after that episode came out, a great deal of things changed in my life and my husband's life and in our marriage dynamics entirely. So it's taken about 2 years for me to come back to the mic to talk about marriage. But I am doing part 2 today, and in the studio I have with me my husband, Matthew Souders. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
And I like to talk about marriage because it's important to me. And as a therapist, it's something that comes up all the time, even if I'm not acting as a marriage counselor. And something that I think is really important to point out is when you're looking at someone's marriage, particularly what you see on social media, or even just what you see from interacting with them or talking to them, is that we often see the successes, right? And we don't always see what I would call the losses. And in the 2 years since I've done the last episode, something really stuck out to me, and I learned something even about myself and about our personal marriage, is that if you want a big life, you need to be really ready for big losses. And some of you might remember that when I did the podcast before, I talked about I met my husband when I was 18. And we were definitely at the bottom of the barrel, right? We had certainly no real money. There was not an inheritance or rich parents or anything along those lines. So we knew everything we got we had to work for. But we both really wanted what I would consider to be a big life, and we were going to chase that. And I think it wasn't until the last 2 years that we really started hitting what I would just consider really big losses.
Yep, there have been a few. It's been a wild ride.
Yes. Yeah, it's been very up and down. And we've been fortunate that it's not been our health or the health of our children, but it has just been hard. We take gut punches as much as anyone else. It hurts just as much for us. And probably one of the things that I would say set off these losses was the loss of our dog. And what happened was we were on a trip. Actually, you were at a work conference. Our dog was boarded. She got out from that place, and we came back home. We hired dog trackers and a drone, and everything we put into that, the thousands of flyers, the hours of searching, the horrible prank calls that you deal with, it really consumed our entire summer just searching for this dog, and we never got her back. And that's one of those times where you're just overcome with how worthless money is. Like nothing was working. Nothing ultimately did work. It didn't work out for us. And that sucks just as much for us as it does for anyone else. And I think about that because there was obviously some other losses and difficulties that we dealt with, just like you do in any marriage. But, our marriage isn't insulated by that. But I remember in the midst of all this, there was a small chunk of time where I was like in the eye of the hurricane, and everything was imploding, but it was like I was watching it on a TV screen because multiple horrible things seemed to be happening at the same time. And I knew I couldn't hold there. But in that time, I was like, okay, at some point it's going to hit. And when it did, I remember we were both just laying in bed, and I said, we're both going to grab coping mechanisms. I need you to only grab the healthy ones. Like you have to dig in and absolutely cannot grab anything unhealthy. You got to grab the healthy ones. Do you remember that?
I do, yes.
Yeah. And I like to tell people, because when you're married, right, you marry that person and they have every coping mechanism they've ever used in their toolbox. That's why when someone who used to be an alcoholic will be introduced, they will say, I'm an alcoholic, right? Because that tool never actually leaves their toolbox. It's the same for an addict, a gambler. Anyone else who had any unhealthy tool, it is constantly in your toolbox. What we have to do is add enough healthy tools that you grab those instead. It's really important to know what your spouse's unhealthy tools are and healthy tools, because you sometimes have to shove them in that direction. But even more important, you need to know what your own are. For me, an unhealthy tool, this is probably kind of popular, I think we both do this, is doom scrolling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's sometimes you're looking, you're like, oh my gosh, I've been on my phone.
Usually late at night when I'm trying to sleep and the
Oh,
phone
yeah.
seems so bright.
Right, for hours. So, yeah, that's definitely a popular one. I'm an undereater. So
Yeah, me too.
I would say yours is maybe the opposite, but for
Lucky for you, I only have healthy coping mechanisms. So
only
yeah,
healthy.
that's it.
Oh yes, I won't make you share your unhealthy, but for healthy for sure, we want to be able to grab
Wait,
those.
is caffeine healthy or unhealthy?
For you, when you get these
Yeah.
Starbucks with the triple espresso, I'm gonna say that's unhealthy. I'm not gonna, Dr. Amen would not be pleased. I'm not
At
gonna
least
say
I
that was
drink
good.
like plain good 5 calorie coffee, not 3,000 calorie coffee.
I do think we went to Starbucks quite often that summer for sure. But the thing about undereating for me is like, I'm destroying my metabolism and food is fuel. So when you need your brain to be functioning at optimal level, the fact that you can't make yourself eat anything is a problem.
Plus, when I'm not around, you have no ability to cook.
Yeah, I really am not, sometimes just nothing appeals, but an unhealthy coping mechanism those are some of my unhealthy coping mechanisms. Now, the healthy ones, hey, I'm a gym fly. That's a really healthy one for me. I will be very active at working out. I'm also a big writer. I channel my emotions into my writing. So sometimes I actually come out with some pretty great stuff in the midst of a storm. One of yours that I think is very interesting is dog walking.
Yeah.
And something I love about you is you never do headphones or anything. You will just go on these mile walks. And I want to know, what is it about that for you that somehow improves your overall life state?
Well, first of all, my ear won't hold that thing, the iPod.
Oh,
Yeah, the earbud. It's fulfilling, right? You get outside, you avoid things like doom scrolling and eating, and you achieve a short goal, right? So walk a mile, walk 3 miles, enjoy time with the dog, get fresh air. I think it was just a satisfying thing for me.
okay.
Sometimes a few times a day
Yeah.
during the peak, maybe
Yeah.
5.
We have this dog. Her name's Luna. I think that's the love of my husband's life. And in fact, he was going through something and he was walking this dog so much that I guess it stressed a neighbor out, and they came out and spoke to him about this, had a heat gun and said, you can't walk this dog. And you were like, okay, whatever. And still,
Amazon has a solution for that with the booties, right?
yes,
She did not let me buy the booties.
we did not do the dog booties, but those are sort of some comical ways to talk about it. But I would encourage you to ask your spouse, hey, what are my unhealthy coping mechanisms? What are yours? Like, if you see me doing this, what does that mean, right? So if you see me sitting and watching Netflix all day, that's a problem. I barely watch TV. That should be a sign to you that something is off, and you should be able to say, hey, are you okay? Is something going on? I notice you doing this, and that's not like you. And those are the kind of things that you need to know about your spouse, because that helps you understand them and maybe what they're going through that they're not verbalizing. But definitely grab anything healthy that you can. And you want to always be going after more healthy. We never run out, because you never eliminate a behavior, you replace them. So it's important to have many things that you can replace with the unhealthy options.
That's spot on.
Another important part of a marriage, and I know you hate this one, but too bad, it's knowing your spouse's triggers. And that word gets kind of overused for sure. And it's not an excuse to act however you want. Sometimes people do that. They'll say, well, I'm triggered by this, but you still need to know this about your spouse. It's a way that you help them when they're in those positions. And for me, an interesting trigger that most people would be very surprised about would be low sums of money getting wasted.
Mm-hmm.
And even within this past year, I kind of lost it one day over $10. Do you remember that?
Which time?
Fair enough. Now, I know some people are listening to that and they're slightly baffled, but what happens is, $10 for me as a kid was very stressful. If something would have happened to $10, that would have caused my nervous system great distress. So even now that I'm an adult and in a totally different position, it still triggers something in my nervous system. What's interesting, though, is when we discuss larger sums like $20,000, that doesn't cause me the same level of distress, because my nervous system never had a pre-existing way to think about that amount of money. So you sometimes look at this and are very baffled. And it doesn't mean I don't have to work on it. It doesn't mean I don't have to be aware. But it's important to note, hey, this little amount of money, she may not act what I consider normal. Knowing your spouse's triggers helps them, but it also helps you not feel so targeted when they maybe lose it over something you consider small. You think that's fair enough?
Yeah, very fair. You have to know your partner for sure.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to make sense to you. I think that's something you might struggle with more is you don't understand because you, in your mind, $10 is not a big deal. But for me, it's a different experience. What is it that's hard for you to not understand when someone else is dealing with something that's hard for them?
Most things in my life just kind of roll off me. So I feel like the people I interact with should be the same. That's probably not a fair assessment because everybody's different, but if it doesn't bother me, it shouldn't bother you. I recognize that's not real life, but that's oftentimes how I feel.
I appreciate that honesty because I do think that's very true of you, that you would not make a good therapist. I say this all the time. You're a great person, but you'd be terrible as a therapist because that is sort of your attitude. It's like, doesn't bother me.
And I don't even feel like I pretend it doesn't bother me. Like things that actually don't bother me.
I know.
Yeah.
It's kind of annoying. It's not always
Is there
fun.
a piece of my brain that's missing that should bother me?
I think your amygdala is less active than mine, right? I'm the person who sort of carries this family weight. And I think about this too as the PR manager of our family or the protector of our family. That would be me. And I definitely have the hyperactive amygdala, and it serves a purpose. Sometimes it can be a little much, but I told you to ask our child. I said, you ask them who the protector of this house is. They'll say me. And you didn't believe me. And he asked our son and said, hey, if a bad guy came and tried to take you, who would fight the bad guy and who would take you and run? And he said he thought you would take him and run and I would fight the bad guy. I'm like, the kid knows what's up. Like, I am the protector of our house. I do make all the things go round, but that happens when you have a hyperactive amygdala. I am preparing for everything to go wrong at all times. That way I'm able to act, able to defend, right? My claws come out to protect our household. And it's a skill. But again, it has to be reined in like any other skill.
Yeah, my amygdala definitely fires up when you're pissed.
It should. You should be very afraid. The next thing I want to talk about, and this is probably my favorite topic that we're going to talk about. It's from the book, Getting the Love You Want. It's not original with me, but this would be the concept of the minimizer and the maximizer. And this comes up all the time with clients. It's a great topic, but you have one of each in a marriage. It's not always the same, but it typically kind of follows the same thing. But a minimizer is the person who says when a conflict is happening or when something's hard is brought up, the minimizer is the one who says, why do you hate me? I can't do anything right. Anything I do is not good enough. Why are you always mad at me? Have you ever said that in your marriage? Have you ever heard your spouse say that?
Allegedly. I plead the fifth.
Okay. The maximizer is the person who is more amplified in what they're doing, and they're actually pushing for the relationship. They're fighting for it, but they do it in a more boisterous or loud or pushy way. Often that person gets called a nag. Have you ever heard that? And what they're really doing is fighting for the relationship. The maximizer is often called the hailstorm, and the minimizer is called, lovingly enough, the turtle. So which would it be in our marriage? Who is the minimizer? Who's the maximizer?
I'd say there's a fair chance you're going to call me the minimizer.
It typically is the male. Not always. It doesn't always have to be, but it is often the husband who takes the role of the minimizer. Why is this important? Because everyone thinks their situation is so unique. And then you hear that this husband is saying the same thing, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, it's not just my marriage where I struggle with feeling this way. Now, the minimizer's role and their goal is to perhaps listen better, not personalize, not generalize, try to hear specifically what their spouse is saying. The maximizer's role is to maybe soften their approach, perhaps not be concerned about as much, pick more targeted things to bring up.
They say opposites attract, right? So I think
I
we're
would
both
say.
pretty far in one direction on minimizer and maximizer.
And I remember the first time I introduced this concept to you, and you said, so the minimizer is the one who's always wrong. And I said, well, no, but the minimizer always thinks that's what's being said about them, is that I'm always wrong. And I have to know, because women, this drives women nuts. But what is it about a man? What is it that causes them to say these things like, you're never happy with anything I do?
I think we just want to fix the situation, right? It's like, as a homeowner, something breaks in your house and you want to get a tool and go and fix it. So it's fairly similar when there's a stressful situation, right? You want to keep the calm, address the problem, maybe if it's easy.
Do you think that your situation's unique, that your wife brings things up to you that no other spouse is bringing up?
No, because we have friends that we've seen the same exact fight, or you see it on TV, or, you pointed out to me that everyone's like that. I think you're probably right. There's a likelihood.
Ooh, he said it on camera, folks. He said it on camera. I like to sometimes show you things out of a book. And even yesterday I did this, and you're like, who wrote that? I said, see, they don't even know us, and they wrote this in this marriage book. But I'm always looking for kind of normalizing struggles within marriages. It'd be great if everything that made it to social media was really all that we dealt with, but that's just not the case.
The internet's very convenient because whenever you're annoyed with me about something, you just Google a video and you can automatically send me 5 articles or 5 Instagram clips that, yeah, maybe there's an issue.
Okay. And I kind of have an arsenal of this. And that's what I say, is that there are other women having the same feelings. And if the goal is to stay married, which I feel like ours probably is at this point, it'd be a lot of work if it wasn't.
Almost 18 years in.
That's right.
Yeah.
But if that's the goal, then what needs to happen, you think, for the minimizer? What needs to happen when his wife brings up concerns that are important to her? And that's what matters the most here, is not that it's important to you, but that it's important to her. What does he need to do?
Well, obviously, I just need to change my approach and listen and fix whatever I'm doing wrong.
Right. So that's the stereotypical answer. And what's like the real answer?
I mean, marriage is about compromise, right? So we have to look at the problem and figure it out together and see what needs to change, right? Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's you. Sometimes it's us versus a problem and not us versus each other.
That's a good point, because you brought that up, that sometimes it seems like we go at each other.
I'm going there.
And that we go at each other when we're really fighting an entity or fighting a problem that is kind of us against the world. And in this 2 years, that has come up more than it probably ever has. I mean, a big life comes with big problems, and you have to know that you can stomach the problems to be able to have the reward. And there have been times where I have certainly even sat and thought, is this even worth it? Because I'm kind of tired of fighting for 2 years. It's been a lot. It's kind of overwhelming, the things that come up, but you do dig in, and I think you push through. And at the end of the day, something that you're probably better at than most is looking at things as a season and seeing it as a season. And what sort of helps you with that? Like, even now when we're dealing with problems, what helps you push through that and know that there's light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, it's perspective, right? You have a problem in your personal life, in your work life, usually 3 months from now, you don't even remember that problem. You're dealing with 3 other problems. So I think it's just having that big perspective, and hard things aren't easy, but once you figure them out and push through, there's usually a sense of pride at the backside that, oh, wow, I did that. I can do that. I can solve bigger problems.
So someone described marriage to me in this way, and I think this was the most perfect perspective, is that when you're married, you're on a train with your spouse, and everyone you know will get on and off that train. That includes your parents, your coworkers, your kids, and eventually, the only people left on that train are you and your spouse. And if your goal is to stay married, you want to stay on that train with your spouse to the end. And you need to keep that in mind with all the decisions you're making and who you're picking and what your goals are. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're left with. If that isn't what you want, you may want to think about that before you get on the train with that person. But for us, we have gone through multiple seasons of life on this train ride. And we've seen a lot of people come and go, people that I never thought would go. And that's hard. That's still a gut punch for us too, and it's a loss. But I do think that in the losses in our marriage, at least we've dug in more to each other. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, folks also change a lot over the 18 years we've been married, right? I'm not the exact same person that you got on the train with, and vice versa. So,
Yeah, it's been a lot of reinventing for sure over the years. I did not think I was going to do a podcast. I don't even think podcasts were a thing when we got married.
I've grown up and matured slightly in 18 years.
I would
So,
say so, yeah. And so we've kind of done this train ride, and our kids are getting older, and that's concerning in some ways for me as a person, but it is the truth of it. Like they're going to go and become their own people outside of my home, and I have to decide, hey, how is my marriage going to look when those little people are no longer in our home? So the other thing that I thought was a good topic is to recognize your spouse's strengths. It's really important to know that the person you married has strengths that you don't have. And that can be humbling, but it's also a truth you have to sit with. And I've thought about this in our marriage, and we're dealing with a contractor situation that went horribly awry, like many of you have, I'm sure. We're not unique to that. And we were going back and forth about something, and I said to you, like, I was just asking all these questions, and you just calmly said to me, like, you need to just let me handle it. And I thought, you're right. I got to just let it go. I'd like to kind of dive in more, but at some point, someone has to make a decision. And in that area, you were better. And so I had to let you do that. In other areas, you've been really good about letting me handle things with my strengths. And when we were first married, very broke, I don't know if you remember this, but someone had gifted us a Sam's membership card, which I don't know why, because we couldn't afford to go there. And there was one day you wanted to go there, and I said, we can't afford to go to Sam's. And you were so mad at me. But at the time, I was managing our finances. I was better at it, and you didn't really push back. You knew it was true. But at the time, you let me manage all the money because I was better at it. Do you remember that?
I do.
So when we talk about sort of our spouse's strengths, what's a strength of mine that you know that it's better for me to make the call?
Pretty much everything to do with the kids.
I knew that was going to be your
I would say,
answer.
well, I'd say that one, keeping our schedule in line, keeping us active. I would like to just chill out and relax, and you usually keep us moving, and that's typically a good thing.
I think a strength of yours that I don't always point out, but I think your kindness is a strength. And if you don't know, he was voted friendliest in his senior class in high school. And I think about this because I'm kind as well. I think we're both pretty kind people, and I've said this before, that I think the world has beat me down more than it did to you. And if you don't know what I mean, go back and listen to my podcast on being a woman and you will understand a little bit more. But my kindness cup will run out sooner than yours. And I think sometimes you're kind even when I am like, where are the claws? Like, I would like you to be more hostile. And you're like, that's just not how I am.
Kill them with kindness.
Yeah, you seem to kind of land in kindness more than many people. What do you think about that as a strength? When I say I think that's a strength, what do you think?
It can be a strength, and also it can be a point of weakness. It depends on the situation. I like the saying, an animal of prey knows when to attack. You remember, Zach?
Oh, I do. That was
Yeah,
one
why
of my
don't
better
you? Yeah,
writings.
go ahead and say it.
Yeah, so that I said that we look at apex predators and we think that they're so strong because of who they are, how they look, but really their greatest strength is patience, that they will lie in wait and be ever so patient until the perfect opportunity for the kill comes along. So we might think, why didn't they jump and get it? But they know that wasn't the perfect moment. And I think you're better at that than me. I'm a little bit more hostile, and you tend to be a little bit more patient when dealing with something.
Yeah, I think, everything comes full circle eventually, right? And I think back to my childhood, and like, I knew I was in trouble. I needed to change just by the way my dad looked at me, right?
Mm.
And sometimes just the way I look at people, I think without saying anything, gives that sense of, disappointment or frustration. And if you have a good enough relationship, that can typically pivot things.
Look at you. So when we talk about your job, if you're wondering what my husband does, he's a corporate executive.
I'm a senior vice president for Oracle, the software company.
Okay, yes. So you live in the corporate world where I most definitely do not. I think for me, a strength that I know I have that you don't is, and it's really the therapist in me, but I read people really well. So I've been a therapist for 13 years. So if I didn't, that would probably be an issue. But if I read people, I think that I notice patterns or human behaviors that you may not recognize. And twice, I could think of a time that I sort of red flagged a person in your professional world and said, you know, you need to have your spidey senses up. I think this person is a problem. And I said the reasons why. And you said you didn't think I had the right read on the person. How many times was I right?
Twice.
Yes, twice. So I'm 2 for 2 here. And I don't do that often. So it's not like people should ever be concerned if they're hanging out with me that I'm doing this. But I just became aware of something and felt that you were missing it. While it's great that you always think the best of someone, it's also important to listen to your spouse. If they're coming to you with something and you know that they're talented at what they do, you want to take that to heart. And there's certainly been things where you've told me I needed to give someone a break and needed to let it go. And I did not want to do that. And I had to listen to you and say, okay, he's going to make the call on that. He's better at it. My favorite compliment that I get from clients is on my use of questioning. And this is probably the number one compliment I've gotten since I've been a therapist. And it's ultimately, I think, what led me to host a podcast. And I remember one day, nothing was wrong, but I came up with this great question. And I said, you know, if I was just to like poof, disappear, and you sought out a different partner, what would you look for in them that is not a quality of me? See, this is the stuff I come up with. This is what I do. And do you remember what you said to me?
I don't.
You said to me, I'd probably look for someone a little easier, a little more even keeled. And I was like, oh, okay. And I thought about this for a little bit. And then I came back and said, no, you wouldn't. I said, you don't seek easy in any area of your life. And it's fun to say that, right? Everybody thinks they want easy, but I don't think you really do. And while you're with someone like me, who is a lot to keep up with, I always say, if I'm too much, you can find less because I'm not really going to dull down. I think I would look at your job and say, you seek a really challenging job. You sort of almost thrive in this environment that is a constant stress or a constant dumpster fire, or there really isn't a time where it's like, oh, it's smooth sailing from here. And I wonder what it is about you that really loves those types of challenges. And, you know, not everybody does, and that's fine if you don't. But for you, you're definitely after the hard, and you believe you're fully going to conquer it.
Yeah, I don't know if I have an easy answer for that. It's just something that I've always been drawn to. Big projects, big opportunities, big challenges, they seem to find me.
How do you know it's going to work out?
You never do. You have the skills and the grit and determination, and you just go do it one day at a time.
So when something's hard for you, and when you deal with these difficulties in your career, and, you know, little you didn't know this is what you're going to be when you grew up because this didn't exist. But how do you go with something that's ever changing? In the mental health world, to some extent, it is ever changing. In the 13 years I've worked there, things have changed quite a bit. And I started out with paper notes and faxes, which is probably hard for some of you to believe, but there's so much emphasis on brain health and new techniques, and I do love that. But your world also seems to change rapidly for how things are done. So how do you keep up with that?
You just wake up every morning and look at the problems and come up with creative solutions. That's really all there is to it.
When you started in the field you're in now, you used to commute 2 hours each way. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
How many years was that?
Oh, wow. Almost a decade, or between 10 and 12 years.
Which is unbelievable if we think about it.
Yeah.
Now you work from home, but the hours are drastically different, right? It's sort of like a 24/7 job.
Yeah, it never ends.
And we're not unique in this. Many marriages are dealing with the same things. It's what has happened in the corporate world, especially since COVID looks very, very different. So how do you balance that along with having a family, along with a spouse, along with traveling and dealing with the dumpster fires that happen in our home and in our personal world?
I don't know that I do balance it, right? It's always a tug of war, right? And you just have to be flexible to shift those priorities, right? Sometimes the job requires a little more, sometimes the family requires a little more, and you just have to keep all those plates spinning.
Do you think you do it well?
Should I ask you that question? Do I do it well?
I think sometimes you do. I think that, again, in a marriage, these are the hard conversations you have, is you're always looking at what is possible, sometimes just for this season. And I've even said that to you. I've said, hey, this is possible for this season. This is not possible for a year. So in this season, yes, this is how we can handle this. We cannot do it long term. And having those discussions, I think, is really important.
It would actually be interesting if I could look at my life if I wasn't married and didn't have kids. It would probably be pretty unhealthy leverage towards the job, right? Because I wouldn't have the right like signals from you and the kids and the family to turn that off. So I think it would take over.
That's a great point. You know, your family is an asset to you. They're not the enemy. So if you're working in an environment that is very stressful, remember that your family is what keeps you grounded and what keeps things level and what allows you to have an actual life. The experiences you've had and the trips you've had, most of the trips that you've done are things you probably would have not thought of. I'm the one who comes up with things and says, we're going to go hike in Yosemite. Yay! Like, get your boots. And these are the things that you get to do because you're with someone who challenges you. And that's why I think that you sort of seek that. And I think it's healthy to seek that. Like, a challenge is what causes us to grow. If it's in your professional world, great. If it's in your personal world, but don't hesitate to be around challenges because that's what's going to help you see the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I love our arrangement where vacations are adventurous and hard and hiking and whatnot, and then the others are sit on the beach and drink a margarita or two.
Well, I had to throw you a bone somehow. Well, thank you for coming into the studio with me, and thank you for tuning into Mental Health and Me. Until next time.
This podcast is part of the Frederick Podcast Network. Learn more at listenfrederick.com.